afternoon. I'm Sandy Tierney, Chair of the Board of U.S. Squash, and I'd like to welcome you here. U.S. Squash's mandate as the national governing body of the sport includes hosting national championships and crowning champions, training, selecting, and funding Team USA Squash, and what we're here for today, recognizing and honoring those who have excelled in the sport. The Board of U.S. Squash is pleased to honor today's inductees. Their achievements in squash are examples of a commitment to excellence that will inspire future generations. Welcome to this induction ceremony, and also I'd like to please welcome William Louis Marie, CEO of the World Squash Federation.
Thank you. And I'm coming from France, as you can see with my accent. I'm William Louis Marie. I'm the CEO of the World Squash Federation, and it's a privilege for me to be in front of you for this induction. As you know, World Squash Federation is a federation of federations, and it's a great privilege for me to also honor the 120 years of US Squash, the oldest member nation and the first member nation established in the world. So, round of applause to US Squash for this achievement. I'm not going to be too long, just say it's a very great privilege for me to be in front of you. And I say it's great to have two inductees that we're going to discover in the coming minutes. So thank you very much for welcoming me and inviting me to say a few words in front of you. Enjoy your lunch and enjoy this great Hall of Fame ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, and thank you, William. I want to thank the U.S. Squash Board of Directors. We have several other directors here with us today, and I'd like to just call them out and ask them to stand. We have Will Carlin, who's also the chair of the College Squash Association, Kara Carden, who represents the districts. We have Nick Lepore as well. And Carrie Anderson, I believe, is here. And I think, as well as Sandy, we have Chris Gordon, who's an athlete representative, Todd Harity as well, both athletes, one recently retired and one still making a go of it. So thank you to the U.S. Squash Board. They've allowed us as a management team and organization to achieve, I think, some pretty great things in partnership with World Squash and William and Zena Wooldridge, who's their chair, their efforts, and the Professional Squash Association, who are here in strength with their entire senior leadership team. So it's an august gathering, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Specter Center here today. In addition to housing the Peggy and Leo U.S. Squash Hall of Fame, and serving as a model for community squash, priority here at the Specter Center really is the development of Team USA, as Sandy said. And we're proud of our current champions and ambassadors, particularly the women who are world #2 and will compete in Hong Kong along with the men. We have Amanda Sobey, Olivia Weaver, Sabrina Sobey, Marina Stefanoni, and a really strong pipeline. So. And they'll be led by our new national coach, Nick Taylor. So we're very enthusiastic about what we have in store competitively, not only at the highest level, but all the way through to the juniors. There are currently 69 members of the U.S. Squash Hall of Fame. I know their chair of the Hall of Fame committee will recognize them in a minute. I want to thank Jim Zug for all of his leadership. He's chaired the Hall of Fame committee for nearly 2 decades. He's done a remarkable job, and every year their task is not an easy one. It's to determine who we as a community choose to enshrine and to cherish as sacred, not in terms of a religious sense, but as peers and as a community, and who we regard in great respect and revere. So perhaps, though, it really are the choices that those individuals made themselves many years ago, the ones who chose to accept failure as part of success, who have overcome obstacles, the ones who have challenged themselves and aspired to ultimately what may not have been attainable. But today we do honor two incredible champions. It's one thing to train here with an amazing center, all sorts of support services, a full-time coaching staff, and direct financial support. It was quite another in the generation of our two inductees here to do it on their own, making their own way, to be successful, to be resilient and resourceful, and after doing it all mostly on their own, to answer the call when Team USA needed them. So I think we have a wonderful afternoon in store. Jim Zug will kick things off after we've had a chance to enjoy a lunch, and thank you all again for being here.
Welcome to our second induction here at the Peggy and Leo Pierce U.S. Squash Hall of Fame at the Arlen Specter U.S. Squash Center. This, for all of us, I think, is the best day of the squash year. We've got this wonderful ceremony, really great gathering of old friends, and then tonight we have the finals of our national championship. We have many, many special guests here today. We have current Hall of Famers, Joyce Davenport, Ned Edwards, Anil Nair, John Nimick, and Michael Pierce. We have guests from around the world. We have Nick Lepore, who helped found the Hall of Fame in 2000. So welcome, everybody. We would also like to remember those members of the Hall of Fame who have died since our last induction 2.5 years ago. Leonard Bernheimer, John F. Herrick, Samuel P. Howe III, and Ann Wetzel. These beloved leaders, coaches, mentors, champions, and friends are deeply missed. Please stand if you are able, as we will have a moment of shared silence in honor of Lenny, Jack, Sam, and Ann. Thank you very much. Our two most special guests are Latasha Khan and Julian Illingworth. Today represents the final step in a journey that began exactly 45 years ago, when U.S. Squash first acknowledged that squash was actually being played west of the Mississippi. Squash had arrived out west before the First World War, but for decades it developed independently from the eastern seaboard. There was no communication, no crossover, and only a lot of acrimony. The Pacific Coast Association, which encompassed 15 U.S. states and 2 Canadian provinces, started its own championships in 1940. And these were basically rival tournaments to the national singles and national doubles. West, East, never the twain shall meet. But in the 1970s, there was a breakthrough. One of the catalysts was Yusuf Khan, the great Indian champion, who arrived in Seattle in 1970, and he helped develop the game there and around the Pacific Northwest. Western leaders like Hall of Famer Tom Wrightson joined the U.S. Squash Board. And the big defining moment was in February 1979, when U.S. Squash hosted the national singles in Portland, Oregon. This was the first time a U.S. national championship had been held west of St. Louis. This was the era of détente. Slowly, U.S. Squash became truly a national, coast-to-coast organization. And today, we are so pleased to induct into our Hall of Fame the very first Americans born and raised outside the East Coast. Both Julian and Latasha gracefully tore apart our record books. Latasha Yusuf's daughter is from Seattle, and she's the fourth member of the Kahn family to be inducted into our Hall of Fame. She has kindly donated today 2 of her Pan American Game gold medals. She's been an incredible trailblazer. Julian came out of Portland, Oregon, to become arguably the greatest player in our 140-year history. Both of these players, as you'll hear now in these video introductions, have had exceptional tenacity, touch, and mental strength on the squash court, and lively personalities off the squash court.
We were both lucky enough to have our fathers travel with us a lot to watch us play. And one of the things that always impressed me about all the Khan children, Ayub, Azam, Shabana, and Latasha, was that each of them would make a pilgrimage over to my dad to say hello. It meant a lot to him. But one year, at a nationals that Latasha actually won, on one of the first days, she came and she sat down with my dad and spoke to him for about 5 minutes. When she left, I went over to my dad and said, "What did you guys talk about?" And he said, "She mostly asked about me. What a nice young woman." And I looked at him and said, "Yes, a nice young woman and a damn good squash player." And he looked at me with a twinkle in his eye and said, "And a damn good squash player." That's Latasha Khan.
I first got to know Latasha many, many years ago on the Whisper Tour, which is the PSA now, so I'm showing our age. And I really feel like Latasha has set the stage for female squash players in the US. Especially on the West Coast and in Seattle. I remember playing and competing in Seattle many years ago, and one of the reasons I love Seattle so much was because of the warm welcome that the Kahn family showed us all, and I have so many wonderful memories from back then. Latasha basically reached world number 18 and has won the national championships here in the US 7 times, which is amazing, and she's also reached 7 finals along with that. She really has been, I think, instrumental in carving the way for future female squash players. And she really has shown them that the US can challenge on the world stage, which she certainly did. It really was a pleasure to be on the world circuit with Latasha. She always was fun to have around. She always has a ready smile, a very infectious laugh. And when you're traveling and competing, it can be stressful at times. So it's always much appreciated when you have someone who can lighten the tone and just make it a nice atmosphere to be in. So thank you, Latasha, for that.
You were a treat to watch. Oh my. You were fearless on that court and a competitor. Enjoy your night. You have made everyone real proud. I know mom and dad are smiling down on you.
I had the opportunity to work in Seattle for a brief time, and I got to know the Kahn family very, very well. And it was clear that what they were doing was changing the game on the West Coast. But in particular, Latasha, as a player and as an ambassador for the game, was simply another level. I had never seen a young woman move with that kind of grace and power in combination. It was a remarkable thing to see. And then many years later, I had the opportunity to be with her with the men's team at the Pan American Games, but I got to watch her at the Dominican Republic, and she and her teammates won the gold medal, which was just incredible. Always a great sport on court, never a complaint, always a smile. It's been a real pleasure to watch Latasha Khan grow into the woman that she is today.
I remember the first time we met, and it was a strange meeting in Monte Carlo. I'm sure you'll remember it as well. I was a young pro just making my way, one of my first events on tour, and I was waiting nervously to meet you and meet my roomie for that week, and it turned out to be you. And I think we really hit it off from the moment we really spoke for the first time. I feel really lucky to have had you around on tour and, you know, helped me and guided me through so many matches and so many experiences. Still to this day, one of the best people to advise and talk to players between games. Tactical awareness was something else. So thank you as well for that. You were also such an inspiration and such a, you know, a force to be reckoned with during the WSA-PSA merger. And if it wasn't for you and Nat and Jenny staying strong and keeping us all pushing forward, making sure that we all knew it was for the right causes and it was the right decision for the future of women's squash to go forward, who knows if it would have actually happened. And we all know that we are much better working together as the male and female combined tour. So I'm really proud of our involvement, and you were such a huge, huge part of that. Something that I know I'm proud of, and I hope you are too.
Always loved our matches on court. I think we were one of the first players that I came across, and I was blown away by your low kill, which I really struggled to get back. So yeah, thanks for putting me through that many times. Off court, we became good friends, and my favourite memory is definitely got to be our trip to Las Vegas, Grand Canyon, and that was where the Wolf Pack was created. So yeah, you can all ask Latasha at lunch what her best memory of that trip was, as I probably can't go into that on here now. But anyway, what a great achievement, well done.
Latasha, what can I say? You're probably hating this right now. In the spotlight, all eyes on you. You never did anything for the recognition. It's also why you quietly retired from the tour. Although we were wondering if you were ever going to retire. It seemed as though you were the Benjamin Button of squash, getting fitter, stronger, and looking younger every year. And there were always two sides of you. The side we all know and love. Chatty, funny, helpful, and a lot of fun to be around. And then there was the one before the morning coffee. Latasha, we love you. Congratulations on all your achievements. But most of all, thanks for the great memories.
You know, you and we've spent a lot of time together. We've known each other a long time, and we've overlapped in so many different places, singles, doubles, administration. I think I speak for many, many people when I say that you were one of the first people to make me feel welcome on the singles tour, and to, you know, and reach out and positively engage as a young player coming in. You know, you've been incredibly supportive of women's squash and women's doubles throughout all of our time together. You tried to fire me once, but you also took me to the craps table in Macau to play in a dead silent casino to celebrate a win. So we've had many, many good times together. And I hope, you know, long may those continue. But honestly, I hope you're having a fabulous evening where you get to celebrate and be really, really proud of everything that you've achieved. And I just want to say thank you for being a good friend to me and a great support system. Thank you very much. Mwah.
As your sister, I'm very proud of you. You've always supported me in all the crazy things that I do, and I really appreciate it. Do know that playing the tour would not have been the same without you. And I know all the sacrifices you've taken to be the great player that you have become. But most importantly, not to put anybody down that's playing right now, but I have not seen a male or female play the way you did, just like striking the ball the way you did. You could hit it so hard, but you also were able to place it and make the ball sit down. And I think the most important thing to remember today is that this is your day, and the whole family is behind you. So congratulations. I love you.
So on behalf of the U.S. Squash Board of Directors, it's my honor to recognize Latasha Khan as the 2023 inductee to the U.S. Squash Hall of Fame. Latasha, please come up.
Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. First of all, I want to thank U.S. Squash for this honor. I really appreciate it. This is a really great event, and the center, it's the first time actually I've been here, and it's beautiful. First and foremost, I want to thank my family. I wouldn't be anywhere, just not even squash, but just anywhere in this world without them. And the first person I need to thank is my father, Yusuf. He didn't actually, he was a good player, and we had a club growing up, and he didn't actually force any of us to play squash. He was always, do what makes you happy, and that was his primary goal in life. So he loved squash, he breathed squash, but he literally was just do for his kids, do what makes you happy. So I started playing and at our club, and it was just a fun thing, and never felt any pressure. I just loved it. But without him, I wouldn't be anywhere. So thank you, Dad. I have a really big family. I have 7 siblings. I'm only going to thank the 3 of them for squash. They really help. So first, I want to thank Shabana. I actually would have never become a professional squash player if it wasn't for her, because I was planning after university to go to law school. And I was taking a year off, and she went up to me and she goes, I want to play some tournaments, and I don't really want to do this alone. Do you want to come play? And I said, sure, why not? I got a year, I'm studying for the LSTAT, I'll go do it. We went to Singapore because, it's so close to Seattle as our first tournament. It's just local. But we had friends there, so we went and saw them, and we went and played, and it was like a major tournament, like it was at the top tier tournament. And we qualified in. And we started playing, and I was like taking this a little bit more seriously, because I'm not going to lie, as a kid, I never did one drill. I played games, maybe was fed. I never started doing drills until I became a professional player. And I started doing drills outside of games and practicing and doing all this stuff, and started qualifying in. And next thing you know, it's like 19 years later, I'm still on the tour, so totally accidental, but thank you, Shabana. It's been such a special gift in my life to play. Second sibling I want to thank is Azam. Azam really helped me. He'd get on court and hit with me. He got injured early on in his career, so didn't really get to play much, but he was still able to coach and get on court and feed, and he was great. So I want to thank him, and thank him for producing one of my favorite practice partners, Salim. Literally created him. So I wish he did it a little bit earlier, so I had a few more years to practice with you, but that's okay. And the third one is my sister Shanaz, who's here this afternoon. Shanaz is not really a squash player. She's an okay club player, no offense, but that's what you are. Really good tennis player, really good, and really good pickleball, but she doesn't want to admit that because she's a tennis snob, as I tell everybody. She's a tennis player. Shanaz actually came down to the Pan Am Games in 2003. I had coming off an Achilles injury. Was a little hesitant going down there, so I asked her to come down. Her and my younger brother came, and I never saw him. He was at the beach. I think, did he ever come to a match? I don't know. That's why he's not getting thanked. So Shanaz comes down, and she's like, he was there supporting me, and then she's like coaching me in between games, and this is like a club player, and I'm like, you're actually telling me things that are actually quite useful. So I had her coach me in the final, and I won like the Pan Am gold because literally of Shanaz, and she was much better than Leo Pierce, Michael's brother, who tells him to win the last point. She actually told me tactics. So thank you, Shanaz. I would have never won it without you. That was really good. I beat someone I'd never beaten before, so thank you again. The next few people I want to thank are actually my competitors, because it was nice to see someone. Squash is a very unique sport because you literally become friends with your rivals, people you're trying to beat and trying to get ahead of. you actually they become your closest friends, and that's what happened. That's the one another thing. I made lifelong friends from playing, but these are people I was trying to beat on court. So first ones I have to really thank is Natalie and Tommy. Tommy, I didn't compete, but he was married to it, but they really helped me out a lot. And Rachel Grinham, Natalie's sister, they were great. Laura was really, really great. She talked about it. She's also was really good in between games. Always, whenever she coached me, and we coached each other in tournaments, it was just, she's just really knowledgeable, really was fantastic, almost good as Shanaz, almost. And then not lastly, but Madeline, my favorite shopping partner. She's moved to the US, I get to see her once in a while, but yeah, shopping partner, just fun to be around, but just a great person, great overall person, so thank you. But without squash, I would have never met these people. And lastly, I would just like to say to everyone, squash, it's been great, and I'm really happy that's gotten to the Olympics. It's getting the streaming, the technology. You can see the ball so well now, and the sport's actually getting the recognition it deserves. Because I've played actually a little bit more tennis than squash. Squash is a lot harder running-wise. Those tennis players, they got it easy. They just run side to side. So it was the TV thing. They were visible. But the squash is finally getting, I'm really happy about the Olympics. I'm really happy with all the things U.S. squash has done. The sport has really grown for the juniors. Our professional players are doing so well, and the tournaments are growing. So honestly, that's what I'm happiest to see right now. So congratulations to U.S. Squash and PSA for all your achievements. It's really growing, and it's going in the right direction. So thank you again.
We recruited him as a junior squash player, and I don't think we really had much of a chance to get him. My friend Dave Talbot got him to Yale, and it was sometimes a painful honor to watch him develop over those 4 years. Julian, one of those people who you knew there was something different about him. You didn't always know what it was. He glided around the court, his hands were so soft, and he was always so composed.
When Julian came out of high school, obviously he was the biggest recruit in the history of U.S. squash. I was a freshman on the Yale squash team at the time, and I remember we did everything possible to pull out all the stops to recruit Julian, probably some stuff that wasn't allowed, all types of parties. Then we're writing letters, emails, calling him, and I'm sure that Harvard and Princeton and all the other schools were doing the same. And in the end, all that really mattered is that Sarah, his girlfriend at the time, and wife now, decided to go to Wesleyan, which was the closest to New Haven. So thank you, Sarah. We appreciate it.
It's an honor to have been your coach for a little while, and I have some great memories, one of which I have a very fond memory of you being in Milan. In 2000, you were 16, and all you could do was eat. That was your job. And you went on after that to go win 9 national championships, which is incredibly impressive, and congrats and best wishes to you.
I was fortunate enough for both of us to work together at Yale, and it was a privilege and a pleasure. We worked so hard. Every morning we used to morning sessions. And I don't think people realize that how much dedication you put into the sport. Then one of the highlights for me was like when you won your first national championship, and then you became a great leader too, which a lot of people don't see. But at Yale, you became captain, and we were able to bring all the team on. And it was always tough for you because you were very strong player compared to all the rest of the team, but you were such a good team member.
When Julian showed up at Yale, he actually came a week early to preseason to try to walk on to the Yale men's soccer team unannounced. He was such a great athlete, he probably could have made the team and excelled. But the Yale men's coach called up Dave Talbot and said, "Who is this kid Julian who just showed up to try out?" Luckily, Dave put a stop to that right away, and Julian was escorted out of the tryouts.
I guess I could probably put Julian down to one of the reasons I ended up retiring in the end. It was coming to the end of my career anyway, and I was playing in the Tournament of Champions and the qualifying rounds, and I had to play him in the last round of qualifying in about 2004 or 5. And I just remember it going to 5 games. It was a really tough match, and this was at the point when we were kind of starting to get to know each other as individuals as well. And it got to 14 all in the 5th, of course, and Julian served, and just in his kind of like that cheeky way and kind of that unpredictable way, decides to serve down the middle. And instead of me volleying the ball and kind of trying to attack, I thought I'd let it bounce and maybe shut him out of the court a little bit because it was down the middle. And of course it landed in the back wall nick. And that was the end of the match, and that was the end of my Tournament of Champions career, and that was the beginning of a lot of success that Julian had.
To visit Julian during his playing days was to step into a laboratory of sorts. You'd walk in and there was always some new gadget, whether it was a stretching device or a massage tool, or in a more extreme case, an oxygen deprivation tent. He was always looking for an edge, and I think his wife Sarah was just always looking for a little room to breathe in their New York City apartment. It was funny to watch her shake her head and roll her eyes at the assortment of training equipment that he had arranged around the apartment.
When I think back on those days, I remember him as someone who was a great player, had his own kind of style, very, very fast feet, lots of quick movements around on his toes, held the racket quite short at the top of the grip and somewhat loose gripped. I often wondered how he managed to control the ball as well as he did, but he certainly had a lot of great shots and a very smart squash brain. He's certainly, when I think about words to describe him, I would say resilient, stubborn, competitive, unpredictable somewhat. Certainly loved to have fun, so a good sense of humor, and definitely a good problem solver. And I think all of those aspects are very important.
I was lucky enough to be your teammate, competitor. People would say rival, but you can't be a rival of someone if you never really beat them. So I kind of have the Andy Roddick, Roger Federer syndrome. But what you did for U.S. squash is just, I don't think people talk about it enough. Your career on the PSA World Tour was incredible for an American at the time. To get to 22 in the world, I believe, the highest ranking ever, is not talked about enough. And how you did it your way. You marched to the beat of your own drum, and that's something that I was always inspired by. I'm reminded of how great you are every day. I have this picture of us from the record-tying finish in Germany, where you beat Razik, where we beat Canada. Obviously, I was injured, but I was cheering like a madman. I also have, all my second place trophies from you beating me in the finals of the Nationals each and every year. But I can't. It was the best part of my career. I have to say was being your teammate on Team USA. We had so many good times traveling the world. World University Games in Szeged. What an experience that was in Hungary in 2006. The travels to Cuenca in Ecuador, and then the world teams in Copenhagen, the world teams in Germany, and then the world teams in France. So being able to travel the world with you, man, playing against you in college, just kind of growing up together on the tour as we did. I'm so proud to say that, I was a contemporary of yours, and so happy for you in the honor that's being bestowed upon you today. So Jules, you're one of a kind, an amazing competitor, one of the best that I've ever played against. an incredible human being, and fortunate enough to call you a friend. So congrats again, pal.
On there, and you beat Shahir Razak. You were 2-love down, and then you came back and won. Played the most amazing game, and that got us 6th place in the world teams.
One of the highlights was we were playing against India, and the U.S. team was playing, I believe, for the number 7 spot, perhaps the number 6 spot, which would have given us our highest finish up to that point. And he played Saurav Ghosal, who, as we know, made it all the way up to top 10 in the world. And Julian took him out. And when I mentioned to Julian what a phenomenal performance that was, he kind of shrugged and said, well, you know, just another match.
Julian was a bit of a lone wolf. He was the he was one of the few players in New York who was there for the peak of his career, and he, as such, he was directing his own training. There really wasn't a stable of full-time players there, and under a specific system. So it was his own system, and as a player, he was very sophisticated. He had elite athleticism and wonderful racket skill, but he had an attacking mindset that really distinguished him. He wasn't just out there trying to outlast his opponent. He knew what it took to win rallies. He was very good at managing risk, and he gave all players all sorts of trouble, and was unbeatable amongst his fellow Americans for a decade.
At the Pan American Federation Cup in Medellin, there was one match that Julian played, and this is a great example of how he would try and get into someone's head. He was in the middle of the match. It was quite a tough match, and I think it might have been against Jose Becerril, but suddenly he decided he was going to do some corkscrew serves. So he basically spent a game and a half, 2 games, corkscrew serving every single serve. He must have done 20 or 30 corkscrew serves in this Pan American Federation Cup match, international match, and it worked actually. He got into his head and managed to pull out a win in a very tough match, and just a great example of his kind of problem solving in the moment, not taking himself too seriously and not getting overwhelmed with pressure, but also trying to work out a way to really succeed in the moment. And that stubbornness and that unpredictability and the resilience in all of those things really was a kind of a constant through the whole course of his career.
Julian was an incredible competitor, so intense on the court, but had sometimes a casual excellence, wasn't always the best planner. I remember one year in the Tournament of Champions, he made it onto the main court, was playing a great match. All of our Yale squash teammates were there rooting him on, cheering. And in between games, he changes his t-shirt and changes into a Chelsea Piers soccer shirt with number 11 or something on the back. The Yale men's team had an alumni team playing in the Chelsea Piers Intramural Soccer League, and sometimes Julian would stop by and play with us. He hadn't packed enough shirts, so ends up winning this incredible match on the court at the Tournament of Champions wearing an intramural soccer shirt.
I think one of the things that really stood out to me about you as a player was how you were able to perform so well under pressure and just be yourself in the most stressful situations. This always hit home to me when I remember we were playing a tournament at the El Nogales Club in Bogota, and I came down in between games to coach you, and I was trying to get stuck in, talking tactics, getting the ball to the back a bit more, I'd push up the court, all that kind of stuff. And you just kind of looked at me as you took a swig of water and were like, man, Gordo, I was playing this awesome video game back in the room, and I think I know how to beat it. I got to finish this match up quick so I can get back to the room and get back on the video games. And at the time I was like, what's he talking about? Like, how's he not like in the zone, really focused on the squash? But looking back on it now, coming to the end of my own career, I'm like, wow, is kind of genius there, because he was able to be so relaxed and so natural in these really high stress situations. And it definitely served you well, and you've produced some amazing results on the PSA World Tour and playing for the U.S. men's national team. It was a real pleasure for me to share the journey with you, and congratulations on this amazing milestone.
So it is my honor on behalf of the U.S. Squash Board of Directors to recognize Julian Illingworth as an inductee to the U.S. Squash Hall of Fame. Julian?
Short. I was told to speak, so this one can pick it up. I would just like to say I'm a serious squash player here. This is that I'm not sure. I think I definitely tried to cultivate to some degree a personality of carefree attitude and that kind of thing. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, hard work is any athlete who is talented or anything along those lines, like there's always hard work behind it. That's the key to everything, which is yeah. First off, I'd like to say congratulations to Latasha. Really amazing career. I was, growing up in Portland, obviously knew the whole Kahn family was up there, and following kind of as a younger junior, just seeing what you guys were doing up there and hearing about it. Just well deserved, and it feels good to be entering this alongside you as a West Coast. I thought Tom Wrightson was from the West Coast, but maybe he originally grew up back east. He's a Portland Hall of Famer. But also just like to thank Jim for his kind of tireless work on this, and through the years, I think creating this narrative, creating the history, creating the story, the arc of sport is really important, really instrumental, and very, you watch any other sports on TV, you watch Wimbledon, you watch the Yankees last night, you have this shared history of what happened and what has happened in the past, and that gives more weight to the current events. Just having that narrative out there is crucial for squash in the future too, to grow and continue to make inroads, becoming more broadly accepted and more compelling for people to watch and listen to and enjoy. So looking at the context of my growing up in Portland, it's quite unlikely that I would be standing here now, 35 years later. My dad played squash. My parents were British, so they had some awareness of it, but my dad started playing when he was 35 or something. He, was just a kind of an average club player. And when you're a kid, you're pretty oblivious to the steps and the sacrifices and the whole thing that has to happen for a child to become even a semi-competitive player, let alone to take the undertaking of hey, let's play competitive squash. All the tournaments are on the East Coast. All of the there's one club in your town, and so I owe a lot to my mom, especially. She couldn't be here, but just I think everybody I mean, everybody has that driving force when you're a kid to you know, just make it happen. You know, it's one thing to be talented and to enjoy a sport, but at the end of the day, and now with my own kids, I mean, it's just a lot to make the travel happen, the tournaments, the coaching. So, and I feel really lucky. You know, I was in Portland. There was my coach growing up was Khalid Mir from Pakistan as well, and you know, just if I had been in many other kind of isolated situations in the West, that would have been the end of the story probably. So I owe a lot to him, and yeah. And I mean, just looking as you progress, you know, and looking back on it, it's just sort of like I didn't see a professional squash match until I was 15. You know, I remember getting sort of the VHS Canadian Pace Classic, Power, Ricketts, Palmer, and just like watching that and being, wow, that's I didn't even know this, you know, that level was out there. And I remember I played a tournament when I was in LA, like a small professional tournament I played, and I somehow did reasonably well, and I was like, we saw Chris in the video, I think he was like 9 in the world at the time, and I somehow I had like a practice with him in the morning before the match, and I was like 16, and I'm out there and I'm hitting, and I just remember I came back and I was like, man, that was intense, you know, just a totally mind blowing, which you know, in the current day of junior squash and you know, the development that most players make, you know, they're exposed to that much earlier, and just the ease of access to that type of information and that exposure to that type of player, it's, yeah. I actually watched a video of, recently I had found a DVD. I had to get a DVD player, popped it in, and it was from one of my first nationals, so I'm like 20, 21, and I was actually playing, I saw a few matches, I popped in one where I was playing against Chris Gordon, and I was shocked at like how raw my technique was, you know, just like I was doing well, I was playing well, but just the technique. So I was very fortunate all along the way. When I did get to Yale, Gareth really was the first person who kind of introduced me to a more modern technique, and you know, that sort of opened the door for me to become, put in the work that required to really become a proficient, sort of world-class player. And yeah, like you said, at Yale, I'd be kind of remiss to not mention Dave, who was really like a father figure to many. And you know, I don't think I learned anything squash related from him directly, but I think really what he gave me was that just the belief, you know, he believed that I was special, and he believed you know, he believed in the potential in me, like he did in so many others, in other ways, you know, and that is a very powerful gift to give to somebody. And I'm sorry I couldn't be here. I'm sorry I missed his memorial last year, which was a tragedy. And kind of going into my professional career, as we've kind of mentioned a little bit, you know, obviously I played at a transition phase when it was kind of the game in U.S. squash, the game in the U.S. was transitioning from sort of amateur country club sort of, you know, vibe mostly to what it is now, where it's really a modern professional organization and has a system that's producing, you know, producing and able to continue to produce top level talent. So it's exciting to see, like Latasha, this was my first time here. I mean, it's just amazing to see the progress. You know, as you're living through it, you think, oh, this is moving so slow and nothing's happening and all this stuff. And then, you know, if you look at it in a 20-year snapshot, both from the PSA and US squash becoming a leader on the world scene, it's moving forward and taking huge strides. And the Olympics is part of that process. And I think it's going to be, obviously the next 5 years are pretty darn important for squash. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. And actually, when I got a call about this event, it was like just after the Olympics had been announced, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, 28, I'm born in '84, and and I still feel young. I mean, I still kind of feel like I have, you know, you don't lose that. Maybe at some point I'll lose that, but I haven't lost it yet, where I still feel like, oh, I want to, you know, you see these guys play, and the women play, you're just like, I want to suit it up, like, even just for a little bit. But while I still feel young, my knees and my back do not feel young currently, so, and I think, what I think it was alluded to in some of the tributes is sort of what I would say my defining characteristic is that I like games. I like figuring things out. I like the process of tinkering around with stuff, trying to make it work. That involves a swing. That involves figuring out, you know, some silly computer game. And, you know, being able to live in the moment, being able to switch off your brain, switch off your fear, your consequences, your sort of, you know, that enables you to perform at your best. And, you know, squash is an emotional sport. Sarah would always give me a hard time for, like, you know, getting into it with refs and just being like somewhat, not necessarily, I wasn't trying to be confrontational, but just like letting my emotions be out there. But when you're playing squash, you have to, if you don't express your emotions, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, you know, you're not playing at your limit. I really believe that. And I think there are a lot of examples, if you look at any sport, the best performers, I think, are walking a fine line right up to the edge of where their emotions are taking them, and using the power of their emotions effectively. Obviously, sometimes it can spill over, but yeah. And so, you know, just for the young guys out there, my kids, other kids, young pros, I mean, it's just sort of like finding that balance, I think, is the most important thing that you can coach and teach to kids in sports from a young age. You know, the motivation to win is a necessary thing, but everybody has that. I mean, everybody has that desire, especially as you start getting to even remotely competitive sport. But, you know, the most successful athletes are the people who enjoy mastering their crafts and showing it off, performing their craft. You know, that's a necessary I think, characteristic trait of being a really high-performing athlete. And you know, I feel extremely lucky to have had a really great support system throughout my career and really my whole life. Just feeling loved and having the privilege to be able to make mistakes. So ultimately, you know, I feel very lucky with the friends and competitors, everybody that I've shared time with in my career in squash. So thank you very much.
So that concludes this inductee luncheon. Obviously, clearly, two great champions of the game for America and who inspired many of this generation currently playing and are certainly to be admired for future generations. So I thank you all for being here and being part of this very special time and moment. And as Jim Zug, again, I want to thank him for his leadership and commitment to the U.S. Squash Hall of Fame and Awards Committee and everything that it does, as Julian expressed the importance of it. And for those of you who feel like you should be in a photo, many of you, I'm sure, knowing the squash community, feel like you do, head over to the Peggy and Leo U.S. Squash Hall of Fame. Certainly Hall of Famers, family of current inductees, now up to 71 inductees to the U.S. Hall of Fame. So congratulations again, Latasha and Julian, and thank you all.